This is the CHGO Cubs podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app and use promo code CHGO when you sign up today. Hello, everyone. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan, and we are coming to you on Sunday. It is June 11th. The Cubs' 10-game West Coast trip is over. Thank Brendan, God. They take 2 of 3 in San Francisco, but after a sweep earlier this week at the hands of future Cub Shohei Ohtani, we'll see. A 4-6 road trip is where it lands. We will talk about all of that. We'll talk about what that means, etc. We will talk about Marcus Stroman taking to Twitter to discuss the lack of contract negotiations on the part of the Cubs. We will talk about a vintage outing from one Professor Kyle Hendricks that took place in San Francisco on Saturday. We will talk about the bullpen, more concerns there with some of the arms I think we were hoping to see develop this year. A not great start from Hayden Wesneski this afternoon on Sunday, though to be fair, Brendan, if he just didn't have to pitch to Jock Peterson, it might have been a better outing for him.
That was the problem.
But anyway, one thing I want to note, Brendan, I believe I just looked at this. I think I have this right. It is a Sunday. You and I do a weekly recap on Sundays, which means the Cubs lost today. They've lost.
So it's their fault.
All but I think 2 games this season when they have played on Sundays.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. Sorry to everyone. Maybe just cancel us, Corey.
Sorry to everyone. Yeah, I guess this is our fault.
It is.
Yeah.
Rough.
So, all in all, Brendan, one thing I kept going back to as we were watching this weekend was some of the discussion from our guy, Ryan Herrera, who covers the Cubs, of course, for ALLCITY.com, talking about how important June was and what kind of road trip they would need to have to feel better just about the state of affairs on this team. And I think certainly after the sweep at the hand of the Angels, that became very difficult, right, for this to be a particularly successful trip. Had they won on Sunday, it would have been 5-5, which in general, when you go out and play 10 straight games on the West Coast, I think in most seasons you would take that. But for this team, they didn't get to 5-5. They ended at 4-6. And I think, you look at things, despite how bad this division is, right? Looking at the end of play on Sunday, we're recording this before Sunday Night Baseball, but I believe the rest of the NL Central has already played. Pittsburgh is your division leader at 34-30. But even after the 4-6 road trip here, the Cubs sit at 28-37. They're 6.5 back in a really bad NL Central. So I think you kind of survived this road trip, so to speak, but only because this division is so bad, and you missed, you're missing opportunities to really jump back toward the top of this division. So when you look back at this road trip, all things considered, is this a massive disappointment? Is it okay? How do you even contextualize this with where this Cubs season has gone?
I'm in a weird place mentally, Corey. There's 2 ways for me to think about this. We should not be in this situation at all, right? And it's not to get emotional, riled up about this. Oh, they shouldn't be here. This front office sucks and everything. I'm at a point where it's kind of beyond that for me. And it's beyond us trying to figure things out. These are extreme bad performances by many guys. And so I look at the current state and we're 6.5 out. Yeah, technically there's still a runway left, but I am not inspired, whatever. And this season can change going forward. They can turn it around. They can win 5 games in a row, 6 games in a row. They can change the tone of the season. And I acknowledge that. And I will fully admit I will probably change my tone too if that happens. But nevertheless, we're in this point now. We are 7 games under 500, and you're seeing, or 9 games. I'm losing track now. And you're seeing these dramatic, extreme regressions from a large majority of your pitchers. You're seeing performances offensively when the leverage is higher that just don't quite make sense. And so it's hard to reconcile this going forward And also looking even beyond, you mentioned like Shohei Ohtani, like it's hard to even imagine a future right now because so many areas of this organization appears to be in flux. So I look at the West Coast trip, and yeah, as you said, they're 6.5 out, but like my thinking is elsewhere. Like I don't even know if that makes sense, but my thinking is not even at the current moment. I am so consumed with the overall large big picture of this franchise right now. I don't feel as if there's a cohesive path forward right now in this current moment. And things can change, yes, but right now it is so weird, Corey.
Yeah, it's a weird place to be. I think really highlighted again by the fact that, you know, the team that has been leading the division for most of the year. I think the Cardinals came in as the favorite. They continue to be one of the worst teams in the National League.
That's nice.
Which is nice. But the Brewers have been in front for most of the year. They just got swept by the Oakland Athletics, right? Who at certain points of this season were on pace for one of the worst seasons in MLB history, right? So it's a weird spot where, like, I'm like you. I'm more concerned about the bigger picture, but you still look at things, and I can't help but be pretty frustrated, right? That this division is as bad as we thought it was going to be. The team that everybody thought might be pretty good in the Cardinals is one of the worst in the National League, right? And they can't take advantage of it. They cannot find a way to take advantage of a division where the leader right now is the Pittsburgh Pirates at 4 games over 500. The Cubs will get their first look at the Pirates a couple times in the month of June here coming up very shortly. So, you know, perhaps you can make up some ground, but yeah, like you look around things, it's, you know, it feels pretty similar on, you know, we were talking with our wonderful producer here, Steven, before we got on about the White Sox across town where, you know, they're like technically in the division race because the Twins have not been playing very well, but they're not any good, right? So it's like a weird spot where like technically they're like sort of in it, but then you watch them in the 9th inning today, like they can't even score off of Brandon Crawford, right? Like,
he looked pretty good.
Great. Yeah, Brendan's gonna have a graph for Brandon Crawford's fastball. I don't know, but I do want to get into the Marcus Stroman stuff because I think that kind of highlights a lot of what you're talking about. And so basically what happened over the course of this week, Marcus Stroman on Twitter responding to a tweet that was just posting some of his stats. I'm not sure why he chose this tweet to reply to and air this. That was a little strange, but
he was looking for any excuse,
I guess, right? So he put out there that him and his agent have reached out to the Cubs and, you know, their front office about an extension and about staying here, and he reiterated what he has said several times, that he loves being in Chicago. But that the Cubs have not had any interest in that, and are not receptive to that, at least at the moment. The exact quote I'm reading here, this was on June 10th from Stroman on Twitter. My agent and I made multiple attempts to engage them on an extension. Club wasn't interested in exploring it now. We'll see how it plays out. Love everything about the Cubs organization, which we've heard him say a lot, right? Yeah. So I think for me, when I relate it to what you were talking about, is that I think in a vacuum, I can understand, first of all, I didn't react so crazily to this, right? Like it's one of those things where it's easy to have a reflexive reaction to something like that and get very angry. But my perspective was, let's see what they do, right? Like Stroman has his own, side that he's trying to push and gain leverage. He has all the leverage, obviously, but he has his own narrative that he is going to put out there. But let's see what actually happens, right? The talk about Nico Horner and Ian Happ's extensions were pretty bad right before they ended up happening, right? Of course, a lot of people are going to look and say, well, this is also some of the stuff we heard with Wilson Contreras, Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, and that did not result in them staying with the Cubs, regardless. So I'm not going to react too reflexively until something happens, right? Because maybe they're feeling things out. Stroman is at peak value at this exact moment. Maybe he has a bad start the next time and Jez says, hey, let's get on the phone right now, right? You never know. But what I do think this highlights, and the conversation highlights, going back to what you were talking about, the state of the organization, is that it almost feels like they have to do this, Brendan.
That
in
they
a
have to wait it
vacuum.
out.
Well, but I mean, in a vacuum, I can understand, hey, Marcus Stroman is 32. This is the best he's ever pitched right now. I can understand if the organization says, okay, maybe this isn't our best play, right? Let's give a 32-year-old peak value in terms of a contract.
Yeah.
But when you look at things, if they did move Stroman at the trade deadline, if they do end up selling and they decide to trade him, they can't agree on an extension, or for whatever reason Jed isn't interested, like they don't have any top line pitching. Justin Steele has been one of the best pitchers in the National League in baseball. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball for almost a calendar year here, but he's dealing with an injury. And his sample of being that level of pitcher in Major League Baseball, despite being young, is just that, a little over a year. If you move Stroman, you have no reliable top-line pitching. So, again, it's one of those things, it's the same as these other deadlines with Contreras or some of these other players. I can understand if the front office doesn't view them as a particular answer, or they decide, hey, at this value, it's not for us. But at some point, right, like they do a lot of subtracting and not a lot of adding. And eventually, if you want to be competitive and get back into the upper levels of the National League, you have to amass talent and not keep letting it walk out the door. And this is the position that they have put themselves in with how they've gone about things. So the one thing I will say about this is that if they get to the deadline and they have not even spoken to Stroman, which is what he claims on Twitter, right? And based on the past few years, I tend to believe him, right? That to me would be completely negligent and unacceptable, right? Like if you don't want to extend a 32-year-old, we can have that discussion, right? But to not even discuss a guy that wants to be here, who's your best pitcher, who fits very well with what you're trying to do and the money you've spent on your middle infield defense, that I would have a big problem with. But we'll see.
Well, going into 2024 now, as it stands on June 11th, they have to sign Stroman and then some. Like that's the conversation we're talking about. So if you get rid of Stroman, the preference by this front office over the last 3 years has been using players in trades like this to amass younger prospects, to amass teenagers. And that was the path forward. The intention was to couple that with signing free agents, getting other immediate MLB guys back, for example, in the Craig Kimbrell's trade and Cody Hoyer and Nick Madrigal. Unfortunately, it hasn't lined up where the younger prospects from those deals have not progressed at a rate that aligns with the 2024 timeline. That, in addition to some of the hiccups of Cody Hoyer's injury and Nick Madrigal's, I guess you call it failure. There's still a time, but not good. And then even trading for Zach McKinstry, trying to supplement your major league team, it hasn't really worked out. So you look at Stroman, if you trade him, then how do you compete for 2024? Right? Because you do need Stroman and then some. If they do end up trading him, man, we talked about this a few weeks ago, but you have to imagine that ownership is going to grow wary of this. Like, yes, Cub fans tune in more than your average fan base, but nevertheless, most fans are pretty casual about this. If you're listening to us on a Sunday, you're not one of them. Like, you're suckered in. Congratulations. You're sick as us. But most fans, I know, hello, welcome. And Barbara, by the way, I do read the comments. There's a lot to talk about today. We'll get to some of those points. But the majority of the fans, they have better stuff to do. They have lives. Corey and I have no lives. We're talking to you guys. So those fans are going to be tuned away, and Ricketts and ownership acknowledges that, and that's lost money. So I imagine that Jed Hoyer is feeling a little bit pressure. I imagine. I don't know for sure, obviously, but I imagine that if they're not going to be competing for 2024, man, like there's a ton of talent in baseball in the executive side, in the player development side, a lot of ambitious people wanting an opportunity. And Jed's had several opportunities now. I imagine if I were in his shoes, I would be trying to push the boundaries and compete next season. And the way to do that might be taking some uncomfortable chances and signing Stroman to an above market value contract. That will be interesting. Now, if they don't end up doing that and trading him, Corey, I honestly, I don't know what I would think about that. Right. I think my inkling is right now that I would like to see a significant change in how things are being operated. Not saying fire Jed, fire the front office. No, but I do think the process needs to be changed. And if they end up trading Stroman, then my idea of changing the process becomes even more extreme.
Yeah. I want to say we're live on YouTube. So if you're joining us there, hello. If you're watching on YouTube later, hello. If you're listening wherever you get your podcasts later, also, hello. But I bring that up because we have a YouTube comment from Carlos. He says, greetings from Panama. Love your show. Listen to it all week while going to the office. Go Cubs. That's very cool.
Carlos, go enjoy Panama.
That is
what
very
are you listening
cool.
to Corey and I for on this sad day?
Yeah. I would enjoy the weather and not focus on the Chicago Cubs. But very happy to have you here, Carlos. That's very cool. I think, as somebody put it in the YouTube chat, I can't see it now, but basically just said if you move Stroman, you're creating more holes, right? And that's just where it is. I think this is a different discussion if, as we saw on Sunday, Hayden Wesneski had cemented himself, as a viable fifth starter every day, right? And that's not what we've seen. I think he still has a lot of potential, but you are not going into 2024 as of this moment saying, yeah, Hayden Wesneski is our number 3 starter. We feel very confident that he has not taken that leap that Justin Steele did last year, right? You look at Caleb Killian. Every time he's come up, he looks completely lost at the major league level. So that is not something you have any reliability in. Jamison Tyone has started to look better, but still not particularly great, and not a 1 or 2 in a rotation, certainly, right? So again, it's just one of those things where you don't have those internal answers. Kyle Hendricks is going to be a free agent. He's also obviously coming back from a shoulder injury. He's on the older side. Even if you re-signed him, what are you expecting him to be doing next year, right? Drew Smyly, an older veteran who has been very, very good for you, but also someone they're going to consider moving at the deadline. And again, how long are you going to, count on Drew Smyly to continue producing? So again, we'll wait to see what they do. I do think, as our guy Cody Del Mendo was tweeting yesterday, they got to see what's out there, right? If it's irresponsible to not, at least if teams are calling, to field the calls and see what's out there or whatever. But I think you also have to, if what Stroman is saying is true, that's where I really get irked, Brendan. I don't know how you feel about that, but a refusal to even engage is where I get come on, guys, have the conversation.
I don't understand how that works though, right? It'd be so stupid to not engage him throughout the next 2 months, right? So if we're going to come back through July, then I'll be a little bit irked. But right now, I don't know how any of that stuff works. I don't know if the lack of communication is by, indirect, a form of leverage and communication. I have no idea. Where I'm at too, and I see some of the comments, like Ben Brown, for example, right? Throw him into that mix. He is a walk per 9 in AAA of 6 right now, clearly going through some adjustment phases. And you brought up Killian. You're seeing him with Wesneski now. And you saw it with Steele about a season ago. These guys go through weird adjustment phase. I say weird because a lot of the stuff that's going on in modern baseball is unique for the first time. Adding new pitch types, changing certain mechanical tweaks. You have all this high-tech, high-resolution cameras. This is unprecedented times. So it's hard for me as a fan. It's really hard to project where this current roster is going to be at, even in 3 months from now, because you're seeing a lot of uncertainties or a lot of reliance on player development. And so far in the first few months, it has not been linear. It has not gone at a rate I think you and I are comfortable with. In addition to the hitting side, Pete Crow-Armstrong has been really good, right? Nevertheless, he's been great. But nevertheless, I do think there's a discussion to be had that Pete Crow Armstrong's not, while significant and one of the better prospects in the league at this point, is likely not going to be a tipping point for this current Cubs roster unless they supplement this team, right? And in the farm right now, Kevin Alcantara is going through some growing pains, has looked a lot better in the last week, but I'm a greedy fan. I would have liked to see Kevin Alcantara kind of go through that trajectory of development, how former Cubs World Series champions went through that development. That's a greedy ass. Those are top tier guys from Chris Bryant and Javi Baez and all those guys in about 10 years ago, but it's not happening. So at this point, like, I'm consumed by this thought. And Stroman, whether you trade him or you engage in trade discussions or whatever, like, you know, it's Stroman and then some. And I don't know, man. Like, every time I keep talking about this with you, Corey, like my confidence in the path forward is so shattered right now. Like I never have answers, but like I don't see how this can turn around unless an extreme measure happens or the team extremely changes their performance. And that is possible, but it's extreme by nature.
Yeah, I think one thing we've talked about, right, is, you know, one, the price that teams pay for some of these rentals isn't quite what it maybe used to be. Obviously, the Cubs got a lot for Javi Baez at the deadline in PCA, and that's worked out really well for them. But I think, you know, several years ago around the first rebuild, you know, the prices that teams paid at the deadline was just different than it is now. Things change, teams evaluate things differently. But one thing we've talked about a lot, like, that 2014, 2015 core ain't walking through the door, right? Like, you do not have six guys, six impact prospects, rookies that were walking through that door in the 2014, 2015 area. That's not happening. That is not happening for this team. So you're going to have to figure out ways to supplant this major league roster that is likely coming from outside of this organization, whether that is via trade, via free agency, etc. And I think when you look at this lineup, clearly you're going to need impact hitters. I think you have a lot of really good guys who can be a part of a really good offense. But right now, this team lacks a true star on the offensive side. Some really good contributors. Seiya Suzuki has missed a couple games with some injury that they will not reveal to us, right? But, you know, I think he was back up to like a 125 WRC plus, etc. But you don't have that like 950 OPS kind of guy that you can just put in there and you know is going to just dominate for you on offense. That's something they're lacking. And again, it's not something where you look around and go, yeah, no, I know who that is. He'll be up in a rookie, you know, next year in September or something like that. They're going to have to develop that. So yeah, it all pairs with the Stroman conversation, because I think they find themselves in a space where I'm not sure what choice they have. If they want a strong rotation and they want to meaningfully compete next year, I'm not sure where that's going to come from. If they plan to sign two other guys in the offseason or something like that, then okay, fine. But, you know, you're going to have to make that work, right? Yeah. If you subtract him, just like we saw, you know, you have to not only replace him, but then continue to add, as you said.
If you want it, because we're doing parallels, you know, it would even say it's like the 2016 World Series champions. If you want to do the parallels of that rebuild, 2016, they had the base of a strong rotation. They have potential future Hall of Famer John Lester in that rotation. Jake Arrieta came off one of the best second half seasons of all time in 2015. Right now, and they also had Anthony Rizzo coming off two consecutive 385 plus weight on base average seasons, right? The Cubs don't have that base right now. And they can go out and they can try to acquire that base, whether it be through trades. Actually, it has to be through trades or through rapid development in their farm system. Because right now in free agency, it's not there. Unless you want to spend $750 million on Shohei Ohtani, he's going to have, I know, of course you want to do it.
Which they should, yeah.
Of course, they should. By the end of the day, like, does Shohei even want to come to Chicago with the uncertainty if there's other options available? So that's where a lot of my confidence gets broken, because this is not like 2014 and 2015 and 2016. And of course, we're always going to draw those parallels, but this is very different. This entire baseball environment is different. The farm is different. The current core is different. The front office is different. And going forward, I don't know, man. I honestly don't know, Corey.
Yeah, we will see that. Again, like my inclination is to wait on the Stroman thing, and we'll see how it plays out when it plays out. But obviously, his tweeting, sort of brought that discussion to the forefront. So we will see how that goes. Do want to take our first ad break here, and want to mention our wonderful sponsor, Game Time. Game Time is the hottest growing ticket app, and it is a lifesaver for me, especially. I have season tickets to the Cubs, so obviously I have that taken care of. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to you at this point.
Sucker.
But I love it for concert season, particularly in Chicago. A lot of concerts. Last December, I saw the 1975 at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago. Stevie Nicks coming up at the United Center. And buying tickets to some of these wonderful concerts shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you, with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the events. Flash deals and last-minute tickets. Easy to find and buy tickets for every event in your area. You can get images of your seat views and low price guarantees, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection as well. You can forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. I mentioned that Stevie Nicks concert at the United Center. Tickets were expensive when you're looking around, but I know with Game Time, I can wait until the week of, the day of, whenever it might be, and I am going to get the best deal possible. Snag tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
You know what I should have done today, Corey? I should have been on the golf course, and I should have been wearing my Pins and Aces apparel. Pins and Aces is the official golf apparel partner of ALLCITY and CHGO. We love our Pins and Aces. I love my Pins and Aces. I get tons of compliments whenever I wear them on and off the course. They are family-owned, a family-owned golf and apparel business. They make amazing polos, hats, golf bags, even our favorite beer sleeve, an innovative product that allows you to store 7 beers right inside your golf bag and keep your drinks cold the entire round or the entire Cubs game when you need to have at minimum 7 beers. Check out pinsandaces.com. Use code CHGO to get 15% off your first order and get free shipping. Again, that's pinsandaces.com. Corey, see, sometimes we have technical problems, kind of like the Cubs offense, don't we, Corey?
Brendan, I am not going to lie. I am having a problem hearing you at the particular moment.
That's fine.
So that is a little bit.
This is the problem doing live shows.
Okay, wait. No, I got you. Sorry, everybody. Little technical issue there, but we are good. Anyway, did you ask me something? I couldn't hear you.
I was saying that sometimes we have problems, just like the Cubs offense.
Yes. No, problem solved. We're good. We are back. I do want to talk about vintage Kyle Hendricks that we saw on Saturday. Obviously it was a long journey back for him, but the effort that we saw from Kyle on Saturday was really like something, we saw many, many times over the course of his career with the Cubs, dating back to when he came over in the trade. But just really vintage stuff. So I want to get your thoughts on what you saw, how he was able to do that. For me watching and obviously having seen this so many times, like you saw that changeup really working, right? And the swings he was able to get, fading that changeup down and away, especially to those left-handed hitters, falling just below the zone and just getting some really ugly swings. Of course, he was just a few outs from a no-hitter, thanks to, in large part, a truly amazing catch from Mike Tauchman in center field. One of the best catches I think I can remember seeing. And when you were looking at some of the Giants media, they were saying, like, I think this is one of the best catches I've seen in this ballpark. But just really, really incredible stuff from Kyle Hendricks. And, something that, again, how you contextualize this whole season, I don't know, but something that this team really needed. They need starters to go out and give performances like that. We've seen it from Stroh. We saw it with Marcus Stroman against the Tampa Bay Rays. And, this was one of those from Kyle Hendricks that, despite how they've been playing overall and where they are in the season, coming off of that sweep against Anaheim and really wanting to win a series against the Giants, that was a performance that this team really needed.
Yeah, going into this season with Kyle, my expectations were low, right? You have a significant shoulder injury, and I didn't really have any idea what to expect. I thought maybe we see some mechanical change. I thought maybe the stuff would look different. We saw videos of him in spring training showcasing a slightly different throwing motion. Honestly, a lot of that is not manifesting in data changes. If you look at how his stuff moves, his sinker, four seam, curveball, changeup, everything looks as if it were 2016, 2017, 2018. So that's encouraging. And one of the ideas I had going into the season, if he were healthy, was, okay, if the health returns, then you have to think the command returns, right? And last season when he was injured, he was still getting whips on his changeup. I keep bringing this up, but he had, before that shoulder injury, the best changeup whiff rate of his career with that torn, whatever. I'm forgetting the name of that injury now. And so the problem with Kyle was that not the stop, but just the ability to locate those pitches on the edges with consistency. And you saw against the Giants, when he's healthy, when he's showcasing the same stuff, he can be just as productive as we saw in recent years. The only question for me and Kyle is, how does that shoulder hold up over the course of the season? How does it hold up if he's signed for next season, right? And that's something that I don't think I'll ever be comfortable with, because few pitchers come back from an injury like this. There's modern medicine. Things do change. It's not to say you can't do it, but just how I am and how the Cubs need reliability, I will always be a little bit hesitant. But nevertheless, it doesn't take away the joy of me watching Kyle do this, because he's one of the best in the league, man. When he's out there locating those changeups and sinkers in the same window, going up in the zone with his four-seam fastball, and then occasionally dropping in those curveballs, as you saw even in the later 7th and 8th innings to start off at bats. It's such a joy watching Kyle pitch, and I think it kind of speaks to his pedigree and the respect he gets when everyone is congratulating him on that performance. And it was kind of like a nice, exhale from the negative vibes that we've been experiencing for the past month now.
Yeah, it was just nice to see. Like, it's one of those things where Kyle has meant so much to this organization. And I think for the time where he was one of the best pitchers in baseball, I think quite underrated and never really he got a lot of credit, but not the flowers that I think he truly deserved for just how good he was. And I mean, especially in this organization, pitching in some of the biggest games in this franchise's history in 2016, and obviously helping them win a World Series, Brendan, which I think your flag in the background is representative of.
World Series.
Oh, your hat too.
Look at! I actually didn't plan it for that, but you know what? It's one of those days.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, but, obviously he's had some down years. He's been hurt. He had to work back from that. It was nice to see him have one of those games and really get the spotlight on him and it would have obviously been cool if he had been able to finish out the no-hitter, but it is what it is. And I think it was also a vintage performance in knowing that that ballpark plays the way that it does, right? Like, he did give up some hard contact, but he knows in a ballpark like that, like, you can let guys hit deep fly balls, and as long as they're not killing them, it's fine, right? You can get away with it. So that was really exciting. Also really cool, that we got to see Miguel Amaya in that situation. I know that, a lot of the pitchers have really raved about his work and the job that he's been doing behind the plate. And I think Kyle was calling his own pitches, but just for Amaya, someone who has dealt with so many injuries and the changing of his prospect status and stuff like that, for him to be out there catching Kyle Hendricks, 7+ innings into a no-hitter, that was a pretty cool moment. And I think just a cool sort of moment for the organization. Your last remaining member of the 2016 World Series team with, one of your former top prospects who's gone through a ton to get back up here and be in this moment. That was very cool to watch them working together in that moment.
Yeah, Maya is one of those, rare positives of this season too. He had his first home run over the week as well. I saw video of his parents going crazy watching it on TV. Yeah, it's really good. So there's still positives about this season. And of course, I see in the chat, Michael Coladas here saying Jed Hoyer showing his true colors. Honestly, Michael, I'm trending towards that direction.
I think more people are, yeah.
Yeah, and you catch me off air, and I'll be talking to Corey, and it'd be maybe a different discussion here. But where I'm at is frustration, disappointment, because we're kind of taking for granted situations like Kyle coming back, man. Damn, if you were to have told me going into June that Stroman would be asking for an extension, that overall, the top hitters on this team, the top of the order, the bulk numbers look good. If you just show me these stats, I'd be thinking we're, in competition. And even the run differential going into today, Corey, the Cubs had the second best run differential in the National League Central. And if you look at the Pythag record or the base runs record, they're right at 500, over 500 in their expected record. And they have one of the most extreme differences in the league. So that's where, I get frustrated, and I'm sure the front office feels the same way, but also it does not inspire confidence going forward, because this team, this organization at this point has taken these unforeseen advantages for granted. And I don't see significant changes going forward, even for this season, that is going to inspire confidence for 2024. I see in the chat, I'm with all you guys. If you're going to if I'm going to bet on DraftKings right now for 2024, there is no way that I'm betting on the Cubs to be an obvious playoff team. They have to make such significant changes, Corey, to go even to have a place in the discussion of being competitive.
Right. And
it does remind me about our discussions even during the Dansby talk during December and January. The Dansby signing, for all reasons, has worked out. He's one of the best valuable shortstops in the league, showcasing top tier defense. The offense is well above league average, and he's showing signs of changing his play discipline that might work to his advantage as he ages. Of course, you want to see more power, but that's a different discussion. Overall, it's yielded good value. But in those discussions, we talked about what are they going to do in addition, right? What guys are they going to bring in for power? We heard Jed Hoyer talk about good teams blow other teams out. We're not seeing that. There's no obvious intention to bring that in this season or next season. There's no obvious solutions to fit that need. And I'm just clouded by that overwhelming aura that I don't see this changing, Corey. I don't see it.
And I think, as we've tried to do, like one of the things, and, sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's sequencing, things like that. But as you were kind of talking about, like one of the things that is going to be the most important for figuring out this team is I don't feel, and I think most people, they're 28 and 37 right now. Like, I don't feel like they are that bad, realistically, right? I don't think they're great. Like, I don't think that they're unlucky to the point that they should be 10 games over 500. But do I feel like they're nearly a 10-game under team? And true talent and like their actual play? I don't think so, right? So then it becomes a question of, okay, like why, and we'll talk about this after our final ad break here, like why have so many of their relievers regressed, right? Why, I saw it in the chat from someone just a second ago here live on YouTube, like Ian Happ's defense seems to have taken a step back after winning the Gold Glove in 2022. When you look at, some of the defensive metrics, they back that up. Patrick Wisdom, since 2021, where he rated as a positive defender, has 2 straight years now as a negative defender at third base. Like, why are those things happening? And why are they so bad in one-run games, right? Like, these are questions that they're going to have to really figure out the answer to. And maybe, some people are going to say it's David Ross. He puts them he does the bullpen moves wrong. He sets the lineup wrong.
Maybe.
I don't know. Others are going to say it's, their internal development, Jed Hoyer, their hitting infrastructure, their pitching infrastructure. But that, I think, is the most important thing as we go forward here. There's been a lot of regression and not a lot of progression. Right? Keegan Thompson is in Iowa. I think Alex Cohn, friend of the podcast, Iowa broadcaster, was saying that he's looked a little better recently, but he looked completely broken for a minute, when he got sent down, and even in some of those outings in Iowa, right? Hayden Wesneski has not been able to translate into that, full-time starter and really capitalize on the way he looked at the end of last season coming in relief. Like, these are the questions that we're going to have to really get into. And, we're still waiting. It's a 4-year contract. We've talked about this before, but, you're still waiting for Jameson Taillon to look like the guy that even he did with the Yankees, right? Like, why, what happened when he came over here and the stuff that they tinkered with that you've talked about a lot, Brendan, that has not gotten these better results. So those are key questions, and I think we'll talk about some of these, relievers perhaps when we come back from our ad break here.
Yeah. Okay. Quick break here. First break from our sponsor, Goose Island. Goose Island supports CHGO. They have been Chicago's beer since 1988. They have a very deep beer roster, lots of beer depth in Goose Island. I wish whoever's managing Goose Island maybe should take over Jed Hoyer's position, Corey. Maybe that's what needs to happen. They have the Goose
That's
IPA.
roster maximization.
That's it right
Yes.
there. They have the Goose IPA. They have the Tropical Beer Hug. They have my favorite, the 312 Wheat Ale. They have Cody's new favorite, the Full Pocket Pilsner. Whenever the Cubs win, once every 3 weeks, Cody's chugging those Full Pocket Pilsners in his beer bat. And you can grab ultra fresh brewery exclusive beers at Goose Island's original brew house on Clybourne Avenue in Lincoln Park, or from their tap room on Fulton Street in Westtown. Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer. Another break here from our sponsor, Shady Rays. I think the Giants needed some Shady Rays today. They kept missing fly balls, and still the Cubs could not capitalize and got blown out with Brandon Crawford on the mound to finish that game. Oh, my God, man. This team is killing me, Corey. But take on the sun with gear built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered for the warm weather ahead with premium polarized shades at an affordable price. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company that offers a world-class product that's just as good as any expensive pair that we have worn. Durable frames and extremely clear optics for outdoor adventures. That's not all. Shady Rays offers their most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every sunglasses is backed by lost and broken replacements. And together with their customers, Shady Rays is providing much needed support to nonprofit partners all across the country through Shady Rays Impact. From building play sets for pediatric cancer patients to providing young adults with MS, the outdoor adventure of a lifetime, Shady Rays is making an impact in your community and others like it now and for years to come. And if you don't love your Shady Rays, exchange them for a new pair or return them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com. Use code CHGO for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized shades.
All right, Brendan. So you tell me which underperforming, struggling, etc. player you want to talk about first.
Which of the five?
I'm curious, what you think, and I know you've talked about this, I think, a little bit, but where we're at with Hayden Wesneski, what you've seen from him at the MLB level, and if at this point you have a clearer idea of where he fits in as we go forward here in terms of what his role could be to help be successful and contribute to this major league team.
Well, I think the pitching side, especially the 40-man, is so weird right now. A lot of unexpected regression. I'm, like everyone else, pretty fatigued and wondering what's going on with this, right? These are extreme, and this is not Hayden per se. These are extreme regressions from like Keegan Thompson and Jeremiah Estrada, and Hughes has had a knee injury, so it's hard to understand exactly what's contributing to his struggles. But you're seeing from the young guys who are supposed to propel this team forward, taking significant steps back. Now, narrowing down on Hayden Wesneski, this is very nuanced, right? When he came up last year, he's showcasing a slider that most starters wish they had. He had a slider that rated better than about 95% of sliders thrown from just a pure stuff perspective. That alone is never going to make you automatically a successful starter. And that's what's happening this season. That slider is still the same. But unlike last season, the command of that pitch, the command with his overall pitch selection has not been there. The reason Hayden was successful last year, and the reason I was excited about it, and I still have excitement about it, was he was able to not only use top tier stuff, but locate it at rates that other pitchers wish they could do as well. So he's hitting the edge of the strike zone last season and commanding pitches in like the 90th percentile of pitches that yield the most run saved. So that's not happening. Now he's about league average. So with Hayden, he has a slider that's very good, but his other pitches, predominantly the four-seam fastball, is about below league average to slightly league average. The sinker rates above league average, but the command does not. So for Hayden to be successful as he was in 2022, the margin for error on his command is so thin because the other pitches, separate from the slider, just by stuff alone, don't rate as well. But when they're commanded well, as he's shown the ability to do, then he can be your top of the rotation starter. Is that a certainty? Absolutely not. Has he shown the ability to do it? Yes, he has, in a larger sample. The difference that I'm beginning to appreciate now between him and Steele is that Steele is successful when his command is not good. And that's the mark of a top-tier pitcher. That was the mark of Jake Arrieta in 2016, even when he was going through significant command problems. That's the mark with Justin Steele when he's not on with his fastball, because if he misses, let's say the intention is down and in, he misses up and away, he has that natural cut rising type fastball that can still yield whiffs. Hayden doesn't have that. Hayden has to command those fastballs. That's not happening this year. The slider also has not been commanded well this year, despite it showing the same movement. And until he gets that command situated, he's not going to be like your top rotation starter. If even your back end starter, he has to dial in on that command, and the Cubs have to find a way to get him back to that late 2022 position.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does highlight obviously his role has been different. He ended up in Iowa, had some starts there. So, he's clearly a work in progress. But I think the bigger picture concern here is you look at now, Adbert Alzolay had a very nice week. He had a great save earlier this week. He looks really good. I think he's your closer. This is something you've been calling for a while. I think he's that guy. But he had success, dating back a few years ago in some spot starts and relief. And, it took some molding to figure that out.
He's the
but
original pitch lab project. Corey.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at though is, taking out him who has been really good, and Mark Leiter Jr. who's been really good in the role that he's been in, just some real bad performances from some of these guys that I think we were pretty excited about and hoping to contribute to this bullpen. Obviously, Brad Boxberger, before he got hurt, was really bad. Michael Fulmer has not been particularly good all year, even in different roles. He was fine on Sunday, but still has an ERA sitting near 6 on the season. But then you look at some of these younger guys, or these, sort of internal guys that they wanted to bring up. Brandon Hughes, a rough outing on Sunday, now a 7.2 ERA on the season. Jeremiah Estrada, another rough outing on Sunday, a 6.7 ERA on the season. Javier Assad, 2 innings of work, a rough outing on Sunday, a 5.6 ERA. Right, and that's including Keegan Thompson, who is still in Iowa trying to figure out what on earth is going on there. Like, that's a lot of guys, Brendan, that I think showed some promise and some flash. We go back to Javier Assad's performance in the World Baseball Classic. You look at Jeremiah Estrada, who you've talked about before, and some of the metrics that were on his fastball and things like that. Keegan Thompson was the Cubs' best reliever last year, and he looks lost. And I'm not suggesting that you have the answer on each of these individually, but I think that's a very clear problem that some of the guys you were not only hoping to contribute to this major league bullpen, they've gone the other direction. I mean, a lot of these guys look unusable and very clearly similar to Keegan Thompson, in a position where it's like, hey, they have to go back to Iowa and reset, because something is off, something is not working, and they can't get it done at this level right now.
We know what makes pitches good. I know what makes pitches good. You know by this point what makes pitches good. It's public knowledge. It's the execution of taking these concepts and allowing pitchers to embrace them in and grow their games and progress at unexpected rates. That's what the Dodgers have done. That's what the Twins are doing. The Orioles are even receiving accolades for this. The Rays have really ushered this in. The Houston Astros have really propelled this type of movement. The idea that you can find pitchers with particular traits and optimize and bring those traits out is here to stay. That's going to be here. It's the new sabermetrics as it was in like the mid 2000s. It's not going anywhere. Friends are getting hired to do these types of analyses. Teams are investing millions of dollars for the technology. This is here to stay. It's how you execute it. The Cubs fell behind for years in bringing in guys to build that infrastructure. They did it with Craig Breslow, and they did it with Tommy Hotovy and Jacobson. But it's still relatively new. And while you can have excitement about it and have excitement about Jeremiah Estrada's 80 out of 80 grade fastball, and seeing a slider also rating like a 70 on the 80 scale, you can be excited about all of this, right? This is still like a new type of infrastructure for this organization. And yes, they deserve criticism, just like the rest of the organization. When you see Keegan Thompson and the rest of these younger pitchers who are supposed to be staples in this team regress this significantly, yes, they deserve criticism, and they deserve questions from dumb fans like us. What is going on? Because there is a pool of talent. These concepts, again, are not new concepts. There is a way forward to bring out these concepts and yield the best value. And my hope is, given how they've done this with so many veterans, Corey, for so many years, my idea and my confidence in them is pretty high, right? But when you start seeing things like this break in extreme ways. These are extreme, broken players, Corey. You have to naturally adjust the way you think about things.
Yeah, and
right?
I think like that's part of the concerning thing with this season. Obviously, you know, this season has not gone how we want it to at all, right? We're back to talking about the trade deadline, like things like that. So of course not. But I think the bigger concern is like when you look at last year, we knew going in that 2022 was going to be just a waste of a season at the MLB level in terms of competing for the playoffs. But you felt like you got some pretty solid strides from guys, right? Ian Happ really rounded into a very complete player, culminating in winning a Gold Glove.
I mean, the entire bullpen, that's why they were with 39 and 31 to finish the season.
Right. Like Keegan Thompson looked like a legit weapon out of the bullpen. Justin Steele had begun to really take form as a top of the line type starting pitcher. Yeah. So many guys. You felt like, okay, like, you know, this year was obviously not good, but there's building blocks here. This year has had sort of the opposite feeling, right? Where you don't feel, I don't think that way at all, right? We're having a conversation about their best pitcher saying the organization doesn't want to engage with him on an extension. Justin Steele is dealing with an injury and working back, and hopefully he'll be okay from that. You know, Matt Mervis has there's a deeper discussion to be had there, but you know, I think he's hitting the ball well. A lot of the time he's got a good hard contact rate, but he's still striking out a lot, and the overall numbers are not there. So you're still not sure, right, is my point. He has not performed to the level where you go, bang, first baseman of the future, right? That's done. And you look at this bullpen, and other than ALLCITY, but again, we already knew ALLCITY could be good and like a contributor. Mark Leiter Jr. has been really good, but outside of that, you feel like you've developed nothing in the way of, hey, we're looking at 2024, great, add this guy to the list, add this guy to the list. It feels like the opposite. It feels like so many guys have gone the wrong direction. And we go back, you know, even including Jameson Taillon, like it's very early, right? I am by no means like out on Jameson Taillon. We've seen this plenty of times. It happened with Marcus Stroman, as we've talked about. It happened with John Lester when he first, you know, signed the big contract with the Cubs. But you still are not in a position right now where you say, yes, Jameson Taillon is a top of the rotation starter. You're asking more questions than you ever would have thought you would have had to ask with him. So that, I think, is the biggest concern when you look at this team right now. And of course, there's several months for these things to change and for our ultimate opinion on the season that some of these guys have to change. But right now, you really feel like you have unearthed more questions and more holes in this roster, as opposed to the opposite. As Theo always used to say, it's not always linear, and it doesn't feel that way for this team, because you kind of would have hoped it goes like this, right? You know, 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024 is the playoffs, the division title, whatever.
It has to be linear.
It doesn't feel like that. It feels, you know, it feels like almost they're going backwards in a lot of ways.
The trajectory of the organization should either be linear or exponential. It should never be going down. Right. Not with this team, not with the resources, the money. It should always be going up. Or at least if you're at the peak, you stay at the peak. Like the development's not linear stuff. That's fine for individuals, but the bulk sum has to be linear. It has to be exponential, and it's not. And it's going complete opposite direction. And I want to read this one tweet by our good friend Michael Cerami, because I think it kind of represents where my mind is at and why I'm frustrated. But he tweeted out a few days ago, quote, "Until someone comes up or is traded for a big leaguer, the Cubs have not reaped the benefits of dealing the following players: Rizzo, Bryant, Kimbrel, Tepera, Chaffin, Givens, Martin, Robertson, Peterson, and even Javi, even though he's yielded PCA. None of those guys, I think I just listed off 10 guys, have produced a significant contributor for the 2023 season, nor are there any certainties. There's hype, but nor are there certainties for next season. And that was the risk Jed took on trying to play a higher ceiling game. That was a risk he accepted. Clearly, the front office has not been able to supplement the current roster to offset that risk. And we're in a position right now where it is not clear in the future. There are several guys in those trades that I like, that I'm excited about. And I love, listen, man, I'm on the backfields with like Rich Beisterfield during October. I love watching these minor leaguers, and I will be rooting for them every single day. That's why I love baseball. But at the same time, my mind also shifts to projecting for certainty of next season. And you're not going to bet for certainty right now on this farm system. As a fan, I'm okay saying I don't have that confidence. And if you're growing fatigued in the same way, absolutely, man. Like, you have every single right to feel this way and to feel as if maybe there isn't a change that needs to be done, and the change has to be significant in the form of a different front office until things change, until we see another extreme in the opposite direction. So this negative extreme, absolutely. You want a different front office, man? Like, I'm probably right there for you right now, unless something extremely changes. It's possible, but it has to be extreme, Corey.
Yeah,
man. I mean,
that's
we've been doing this for 8 years. I've never felt so out of place right now doing this episode. It's our 1,000th episode probably than right now. I've never felt this lack of confidence, even going through the 2019-2020 transition. I did not feel this lack of confidence, man. And it's not, I keep going back on this. It's not saying, it's not like actually calling for a significant change right now. It'd be stupid to say that. It's June. Like, of course, you have like 80, 90 games to go, and a lot can change from the developmental side. But as we talk about this, you can only talk about things on the current moment, and it's not inspiring confidence, man. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've never felt this bleak about the future. I just haven't.
Yeah. I mean, again, look, like there is a good bit of, not good bit, but there's a little bit of runway here, before we get to the trade deadline and we see ultimately what those decisions are. And of course, there's a few months left in this overall season. So it's too early to evaluate every player in this organization and on this team. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of baseball. There's a lot of pitches to be thrown, a lot of at-bats to take. You
can see the path. It's not a good path.
Right. But, as we sit here right now, there's just a lot of work that this team needs. They seriously need impact bats. We've seen it in the YouTube chat here for, this whole episode. And I think the last couple of weeks, like the lack of Cody Bellinger in this lineup is severely felt. And I'll remind you, though, that he wasn't hitting that well before he hit the injured list. So he would have to come back and look more like he did in April and early May than, just before he hit the injured list. But they desperately need that true power kind of hitter. And Cody Bellinger's on a 1-year deal, right? Like, he might not be here even if he was that player for the rest of this season, if he even lasts through the trade deadline.
I mean, like, even Bellinger's not a certainty for next season now.
Right.
He's missed a month.
So you need that. We need to see Justin Steele come back and be healthy and get back to where he was. I have full confidence that he will be, but, forearm injuries are very scary, and he's still got to take that time and make sure he's healthy. And that's something you have to be really patient with. So there's just a lot to do. And you look at the lack of progress in terms, as we talked about, in that Major League bullpen. Now, I think it was a friend of the podcast, Niren, was listing some names of guys that, they could bring up and come into this bullpen if they decided to shuffle some of these guys around. But again, they're going to have to come up and adjust to Major League Baseball and, get their work in and take their lumps and make their adjustments. So there's just a lot to do, brother. They are very fortunate, as David Ross said not too long ago, that this division is awful. But when you look around, you look at what Elly De La Cruz is doing for the Reds and some of those other players that they have coming up, and the Pirates bringing up some exciting players and stuff like that. Like, they're not well-run organizations. You want to talk about cheap organizations, look no further than the Pittsburgh Pirates, right? But you're going to have to compete with some of these, young, talented players, and you're going to have to be doing that kind of development of your own. And right now, it just doesn't feel like the Cubs are doing as much of that. So they're going to have a lot of questions to answer, especially as we head to the trade deadline and into this offseason. But for me, I mean, more than anything, right? Like, I know guys are hurt. I know things are happening. But if you use the Darvish point as like when all of this started, Brendan, like to be 2.5 years into this, and look, this is no offense to any of these particular guys, but like you look through the lineups on some of these days, right? And you say to yourself, this is where we are 2.5 years into this, right? They've got Mike Tauchman leading off, and he's been, pretty good for the Cubs for the most part, but like that's what we have accomplished in all of this time, right? Nick Madrigal gets sent to Iowa because he was awful this year. 10 games he hits in Iowa, and he's back leading off for this team on Friday. Come on. You know what I mean? That's what we've spent all this time, 2.5 years since they traded Yu Darvish. That's what we've accomplished in this time. It doesn't feel good, brother.
They have to be better. Like, we don't have the answers, right? Like, we are allowed to be like, what is going on here? Especially in like seeing Zach McKinstry go off and Harold Ramirez go off. It's like what? Like, why is that not happening for our team? And why, like, from the positional side, are we unable to capture those types of players?
Right.
So, and those are questions that there's no obvious answer to, but clearly it's been a problem. They have to improve on those margins. And if it keeps going at this rate, we saw 2026, 2027. Yeah, man. Like, why would you not expect anything sooner than that? Like, this is so frustrating, man.
Yeah. At a minimum, right? They're going to need to start showing more in terms of development at the major league level. This is going to be a lost season if they're not going to magically turn it around here, right? Like, whether you believe in that or not is up to you. You're going to have to see more.
Like there's a lot of like negative vibes around this team, right? But like, like they're still in it. It's like crazy. Like, how funny would it be if they like turn?
I mean, look, they're 6.5 games behind the Pittsburgh Pirates. They play the Pirates 6 times in the next week and a half. Like, crazier things have happened. I wouldn't necessarily make any of the discussion about the individual players not true or the organization, but again, it's the same position the White Sox are in. Like, the division is that bad.
So like I know Steven has to go, our wonderful producer, but like, in your mind, Corey, and we'll keep it like under 5 minutes here, like, what has to change for your current mindset to be changed? Like, to go from this ultra like negative to being like where we were, 3-4 months ago, feeling pretty optimistic. For you, what would have to change?
I think it's all about the individual players. I mean, I think you just need to see more success. I think even if the team was losing, but we felt like, Jeremiah Estrada or, even Brandon Hughes being, this bad coming back from injury. Like, if those guys were making significant strides and you really felt, hey, like they have a good mix of players for the future here, whether that's just 2024 or whatever, I would feel really good about that. If Steele came back healthy, Dansby Swanson has been great. I think he's leading shortstops in wins above replacement. Like, he looks as advertised, right? Nico's in a bit of a slump recently, but his defense looks great, and I think we know who he can be as a hitter. Like, I think if we just had more of those individual successes where you felt like, okay, going into this next offseason, here's the holes they have to fill, and there's sort of just feels like they've somehow found more holes.
It's more on the developmental side.
Yeah, so I think feeling better about the individual players outside of their performance. Yeah. Like, as I said, I don't feel like this team is as bad as they have performed. I feel like they have underperformed, even if it's only by a little bit. But I just am like, it just doesn't feel like a deep roster right now, obviously. And that's where I think I get the most concern. And as you mentioned, the list of guys that Jed brought in to contribute just looks really bad. You know what I mean? Dansby Swanson was one of the best shortstops in the league. I'm glad they got him, and I give, Jed credit for getting that deal done or whatever, but like, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Like, he's a very good baseball player. The guys that he has brought in on the fringes look really bad. Nick Madrigal's been really bad. Trey Mancini's been really bad. They DFA'd Eric Hosmer because he was really bad. Jamison Tyone, again, long contract. I believe in it long term, but the stuff they did right away to change how he goes about things did not work, right? So that's where I get, pretty concerned. Tucker Barnhart, you and I have a higher OPS than Tucker Barnhart. Like, those are the guys that Jed brought in to kind of fill out this roster, and it doesn't really reflect very well on his overall decision making.
Yeah. So here for me, and I agree with everything you said. For me, here's my grocery list of items for me to change significantly my current mindset. Number one, first and foremost, I need to see PCA and Camilo Alcantara push the boundaries, both of them. I need to see Alcantara get through this current funk, very young, right? Even he's a 20-year-old playing well above his current age competition. I would like to be greedy, and I would like Alcantara to be an unequivocal pushing top like 50 prospect by the end of this year. That's first and foremost for me. Second, PCA has to be close to majorly ready by September. That way there's an idea of what to expect come April, and we're having discussions about his playing time going forward. Those are the two things. Number three, the entire back end of the bullpen, the pitching lab infrastructure needs to adopt the same tone as we had about 4 months ago. I need Keegan Thompson back. I need to see Hayden Wesneski cement himself as at least a mid-rotation starter. And I need Justin Steele to come back and showcase health through September. Not going through August and coming back and having some weird injuries here and there. I need to be a bona fide top rotation starter through September. I need Matt Mervis to be borderline 115, 120 WRC plus to cement first base. Okay. I need the current top level starting pitchers, Ben Brown. I need that walk rate in AAA to not be 6 batters per 9 innings. I need Caleb Killian. Maybe not so much because we have other guys in depth, but I need him to not walk 20,000 batters a game. I need Jordan Wicks to showcase that by September, even earlier, he's perhaps pitching for the Cubs. I need Daniel Palencia to come up and showcase 102 mile per hour velocity. If that all happens, then I will change my mind.
Is that it?
It's a big grocery list, right? And when I spell it out like that, I hope that kind of reflects where I'm at right now, because going into the year, whether it was stupid or not, I thought that legitimately was on the table. I didn't think it was going to be the bulk sum of every single one of those guys, sans PCA, going in the other direction. It's not to be too hard on Alcantara because he's still young and he's been better, but I'm greedy. I'm a greedy fan. This is what I wanted.
I do agree with Craig in our YouTube chat here. To me, one of, if not the most important thing for the rest of this season is that Justin Steele comes back, is healthy, and continues to sit atop the National League in terms of his performance. I think that is clearly something that is just
some of these comments are hilarious.
Extremely important. Obviously, I think that's sort of obvious, but it's not a given, right? Injuries are injuries, things happen, and it's very, even though their sort of dialogue is that they avoided some major thing and he's going to be fine and he's carefully working back. You never know, right? And so Justin Steele getting back, being healthy, and getting back to being one of the best pitchers in baseball, as he has been since around June of last year, that I think is one of the most important things that happens for the rest of the year. I think that's all we have. As we look ahead to this coming week, the Cubs are off on Monday after playing, of course, 10 straight games on the West Coast. They have a nice 6-game homestand where they will bring in and face for the first time the first place Pittsburgh Pirates coming in on Tuesday through Thursday, and then they get the Baltimore Orioles coming in over this coming weekend. And the Orioles have been quite good. Guys like Adley Rutschman really leading them. And the Orioles, even though they play in a division with the Rays, who have, for most of the season been the best team in the league here, Orioles have been quite good. So that is going to be an interesting test for the Chicago Cubs. After that, the Cubs have 3 in Pittsburgh, and then they are off for a couple days on the 22nd and the 23rd, while they go across the pond to visit our good friend Rachel over there there in
Circadian
London.
rhythms are going to be so messed up, man. It's going to come back and cause like 4 more losses probably.
To take Cubs take on the Cardinals, of course, in London. But that is sort of your upcoming schedule here. Again, it's a weird spot. The Cubs sit 6.5 games out of first place. I'm looking at the chat and social media. A lot of people have written this team off. Some people are kind of clinging to that. You know, they're a couple sweeps away from being in first place in this division somehow. However you want to look at that is completely up to you. I think like most of us remain pretty frustrated just by the overall play of this team, and I think a 4-6 West Coast trip, while not a disaster, was not quite good enough for what this team really needed. So they'll have a chance when they play the Pirates 6 times here coming up. We will see how they fare in those. But Brendan and I will be back with you next Sunday. Of course, don't forget to tune in to Cody, Luke, and Ryan for all of your pre- and post-game needs as the Cubs welcome the Pirates and the Orioles into Wrigley Field this coming week. We appreciate all your support for CHGO and the CHGO Cubs podcast. Don't forget to use that code CHGO when you download the DraftKings app. DraftKings is the #1 rated sportsbook in America. Use code CHGO when you download that app. We will talk to you guys again soon. And as always, go Cubs.